Hello, so if you remember in the last few videos we've been talking about matrices, then we've been talking about arrays. So a matrix is basically a two-dimensional table. It's kind of like rows and columns, okay? An array, the way to think of it at least, is just matrices kind of stacks on top of each other. So you've got like a three-dimensional matrix, but they can exist in as many dimensions as you like. Arrays can exist in as many dimensions as you like. In this video, I'm going to talk about what happens when you actually want to save what you've produced. So in this case, I want to save the array which we created in the last video. I want to save it to a separate file, then I can either load it back into R in a different kind of day, or I can give it to one of my friends and they can have fun playing around with the data in my array. Okay, the way to do that, first of all, one thing I do need to add, if you remember last time, I didn't bother putting any labels on the third kind of dimension, the levels dimension. So I'm going to do this now. It was the data which I created was sort of data in a doctor's surgery. Imagine, I made the data up, literally, and it was kind of, I said, right, think of it as information in a doctor's surgery, where each level is a different year. So it's the same people, same information, or same types of data, but it's sort of each level is a different year. So I need to basically write a vector. I'm going to call it years. It's a text vector, so I need to put the quotation marks around it. The first entry is year one, so the first level is year one, and the next level is year two. So year one, year two. Okay, and then I come down here to my arrays function. You notice down here where I put the dim names, that is the dimension names. Okay, and I'll create a list. At the moment, I've just got the rows and the columns. Okay, I also need to add, because I'm saving it, I also need to add the third, so the years vector, basically, the levels vector. You don't need to, you just won't end up with any names on that dimension. But, it just makes things a little bit easier. If you're bothered to name them properly. Okay, now I'm in a position where I can write this. Okay, I can write this to a separate file. And fortunately, there's a really nice function in R called write.table. Write the table, okay? So it goes write.table. Okay, and then I open my parentheses and I specify what it is that I'm going to actually save. So the first entry is what I want to save. So I want to save, first of all, I want to save the array, okay, which I've given the name A. Okay, so I can just type A as the first entry, the first argument in my write.table command. The second entry is I type file equals, and that just simply says, what do you want to call it? What do you want to call your data which you want to save? So use the quotation marks, okay, and I'm just going to call it example array, okay? Now, the one thing I do need to add is the extension. Now, by extension, I mean the file type. Okay, so you think about a picture document, for example, when you've got a picture on a computer, the common extension is .jpeg, .jpg. Okay, you can also have .bitmap, BMP, .png. When you save a Word document, for example, it'll be saved as .doc. Okay, the extension is the whatever comes next, is the type of file that you want to save it as. So here, I want to save it as a text file. It's the most easiest file to save it as. It's what's known as a flat file. It means there's kind of no information there. It's just simply saving text into a file, text file, okay? And the extension for a text file is .txt, okay? Another thing that I can add, so I add a comma, is append. So for example, if I've already saved something called example.array.txt in a folder somewhere, and I want to add to that, so I just want to stick it at the end, then I put append equals true, okay? If I don't, then I put append equals false, or I'm just going to leave it blank, and by default, it won't append it, okay? Right, I think we're ready to run it. Oh, one thing I do need to add is where I'm going to save it. Now, we'll talk about in the next video, when I'm actually talking about loading data in, how to set up the directories and things like that. And you can use a similar kind of process here. But the simplest way for the moment, all I'm going to show you at the moment, is just how to set up a working directory. Now, directory is just a folder. And the way to do it is just go session, set working directory, and then go down to choose directory. And what that does is it chooses the folder, choose the place where you want to save this file to. I've already done that. So if I just click source, okay, then that should have already done that. So if I come over here, you can see here, I've got a file called example.array or sample array. Click on that. And what it's basically got there is the information which I need, okay? Now you notice the trouble is when you save something to a text file, it kind of gets compressed. It's very difficult to read now. You wouldn't believe that there would be two dimensions, a three-dimensional matrix in here. But there is, and I can show you that with the read.table command, which actually will pull this data back into R. without having to do anything else. So if I come down here to my RStudio, I've come down to my console line, and let's just say that X takes the value of, so I read.table, okay? So read.table basically means now I can now read in the file which I've just saved. So read.table, okay, what file do I want to read? I want to read example array.txt. Okay, I click enter. I click X, okay, and there is my array sitting there. It actually, that first bit is the first level of my array, so like the first matrix, and then here is my second level of my array, so like my my second matrix. If I wanted to write more things, I can also write matrices, I can also write vectors. Just for example, let me show you how to write the first matrix, and then I'll take it on good word that you can do the rest. You want to save other things. So let's do write dot table, and I'm going to save the first matrix, which I've called M1. Okay, I need to give it a name, so file equals, and what do I want to call it? Let's just call it matrix 1. Okay, matrix 1. Again, I'm going to save it as a text file, so .txt. That's enough. I've already set the working directory. I don't need to set it again. I'll click source, and then I come down here, and lo and behold, there's matrix 1, which if I open that up, there is my matrix. Now notice I haven't put any column names or dimension names in there. If I did want to go back and add the row names using the row names function, I've shown you how to do that in the last video, and the col names function, then it would come up with the column names in there as well. So yeah, so that's how to save data into from R to an actual text file. If I then wanted to read this matrix in again, I could just do exactly the same thing using the read.table command.